They said the house was empty. No lights, no neighbors, no reason anyone should be inside. But at 3:17 a.m., someone started knocking on the bedroom door from the inside. I'm Samnang. This is where we trade comfort for curiosity. Find somewhere dark and quiet. Put your headphones on and listen like you're the one in the story. Tonight's story is called Glasswater, the lake that keeps your name. Let's begin.
They pull her up through mud that smells like crushed leaves and old rain. Her hair clings to her neck, her lips shiver. A rescuer asks, gently, "What's your name?" She opens her mouth and the lake gives a sound, like a bell in a deep cave. But no name comes. The surface holds a pulse. What comes out instead is a wordless look, a recoil, and then a whisper that everyone remembers as if it were a promise. It's here. It's keeping it.
Mara was the person they called, a conservation biologist who grew up skipping stones along Glasswater's shoreline. She came back because the town started returning people without what anchors them. The names their mothers gave them, the signatures on their jobs, the small syllables you answer to. She came back because she couldn't let that be the end of a pattern. Listen closely now.
Glasswater is shallow in parts, deep in others. When I was a kid, you could see trout flick like silver commas. There was a dock my father built with his hands. We carved initials into the planks. I came home because the notices started piling up on the diner bulletin board. Returned, they said, in blocky black letters, and then smaller, no name. I thought somebody was playing with grief, until the third person came back, and their mother couldn't call them anything at all.
We always told stories about the lake, sure. Old women sang to it when they planted beans, but never like this. When a man came back last summer, he pointed at his chest, and he looked at you like he was reading you for the first time. "Who are you?" he asked the nurse, and he didn't know. Folks whisper about bargains made long ago. I don't know about bargains. I only know the wood under the dock keeps the names of ones who fall in, if you believe in such things.
The first strange event the town recorded was small enough to be dismissed. A teenage boy wading after a tossed football, a slip, a breath underwater. They fished him out. He coughed, eyes raw. He looked at his mother and said, nothing, not even a mutter. Medical writers later called it acute confusional state. Locals called it the lake's taking. Mara started collecting timelines. Who went in, when, who pulled them out, what they said first. A pattern began to repeat like a tide.
I started with the obvious: exposure, head injury, trauma. We ran tests. People were not neurologically blank. Their memories of events were intact, where they'd gone to school, their allergies, the names of dogs they'd owned. But names would slip like pebbles from their hands. It was the oddest thing. You could ask a returned person to tell you where they worked, and they'd do it, but not say the boss's name. Ask for their own name, and they would pause, as if the sound had wandered off. The lake had taken syllables, not facts.
The more timelines Mara mapped, the more the town's old rituals came into focus. There was a ledger, a notation in a dusty town log. Naming boundaries, do not forget the water's dead. It sounded like a line from a folktale until Mara dug deeper and found a faded photograph of a summer festival where children walked the shoreline, dropping knotted strings into the current. An old man in the picture looks right at the camera, a finger raised, as if to stop anyone from asking. This is where things change.
My grandmother used to say you give the lake a word when you walk the edge. They called it settling the name.
If you took a new person to the water, you said their name loud and loud until the reed answered. Keeps it warm, she says. Maybe they tied the wrong end. Maybe people forgot the old ways. I don't like to say which, but it ain't just wind.
Mara's interviews pulled people into the narrative. A lifeguard who remembered the exact ripple pattern before the first returnee surfaced. A park ranger who found a child's drawing of a lake that had every face erased except one. She filed notes with dates and weather reports. She checked coroner's lines. Nothing matched a neat cause. Instead, a pattern of repetition emerged. Returns clustered on fog-heavy mornings, after music festivals, or when the town had been awake late drinking stories. The lake remembered the crowd as much as the person.
I found an old dock ledger under the rotted boards, waterlogged and sown with mildew. Names were written in different hands. Some ink bled away. Near the back, there was a page folded carefully inward, a set of names scratched out, and then a single line left. Pay the word. Pay it back. I read it, and the hairs on my arm stood up. That's when I realized I couldn't just take notes anymore. I had to test whether the lake was keeping things on purpose, or if it was a terrible accident of memory.
The turning point arrived on the night Mara went to the dock alone. She had a recorder, a waterproof notebook, and a list of returned people's first words. The moon was a thin coin over Glasswater. The surface held the sky like a lid. As she waded in, the reeds closed behind her like a door. Her choice was simple and small. Step in and ask the lake for what it had taken. This is the moment. The darkness whispers. When the water touched my knees, it was cold, but not merely cold, like the inside of a forgotten house. I said their names aloud. First, the returned ones, then the carved initials from the dock. My voice felt thin, but the water gave back light. At first, it was only echoes. Then the reflection next to me blinked in a way reflections don't usually blink. It wasn't my face. It was a mouth moving without sound. Give it back, it mouthed. My chest felt hollow, as if someone had opened a window inside me. And then the lake answered, not with a voice you could bottle, but with a sequence of tiny changes. The ripples arranged themselves like braille. A school of fish broke surface in a line that spelled out something no one could quite read. And the dock below screamed with a creak that sounded suspiciously like a throat clearing. Mara realized the lake didn't take at random. It bound names into patterns, stacked them like stones. It accepted offerings, songs, words, rituals, and held those syllables as if storing them for winter. There was a choice in that hour. I could step deeper and try to pry one name back, or step away and let the ledger keep the rest. I took a breath and pressed my hands into the water and asked for one name. The surface broke like a mirror. For half a second, I felt another mind there, patient like a beast that had learned manners. It offered me a single sound that wasn't a name in any language I knew. I realized then that to take back a name might cost me a piece of mine. I walked out with wet knees and a ledger in my pack. I had an answer, but not the one I wanted.
The climax unfolded not as a thunderclap, but as a tightening fist. People who had been returned began to avoid mirrors. They wrote names in the margins of books and found the ink run. A woman who'd been found on the shore started leaving food for the lake, little bowls of berries, and then stopped eating her own. the town divided between those who wanted to perform the old naming rite again and those who wanted to fence off the shore and forget. Mara's ledger, once cleaned and read, suggested there had been a bargain. The town gave up a syllable each year in exchange for an abundance of fish. But bargains, like language, drift and warp over time.
We tried to bind the names back with a ceremony. Lanterns, candles, people shouting the words until their throats were raw. For a week we thought it worked. Then a radio host in town, God rest his quiet heart, called in that morning and said he couldn't remember the name of his wife. He had the photographs, the laughter, the stories, but not her name. That cut deep. You could see the town fold in on itself like a paper flower left in rain.
The aftermath was private and strange. Returned people learned to reintroduce themselves with small rituals, touching their wrist where a name tag used to be, asking strangers to call them by a new nickname until it stuck. Some left. Some stayed and started a practice of carrying pieces of paper with names tucked under their clothing. The ledger is back in a museum drawer now, corded, with a note, for study. But the dock still creaks in a certain way when the wind is wrong. And sometimes at dawn, a whisper comes off the water that sounds suspiciously like a name you almost remember.
The final image I want to leave you with is small and clean. Under the oldest board of Glasswater's dock, someone has scratched a name so faint it looks like a feeling rather than letters. The mark is fresh enough to flake when the sun hits it. A child in town says she hears someone call her in the reeds each morning, and when she answers, a breeze rearranges the hair at the back of her neck. The lake keeps its ledger. It keeps its pulse. It keeps, apparently, our syllables when we are careless about what we offer.
If you're still here, it means the story followed you all the way to the end. Take a breath. Look around your room. Make sure everything is exactly where you left it. I'm Samnang. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who listens in the dark like you do. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, check the corners, keep your eyes open, and your lights, maybe not too bright.